I'm going to be talking about a somewhat related topic to my previous video today. But before I get into that, I need to preface the video with something, because every time I talk about entertainment, films, video games, and just escapism in general, there are inevitably a bunch of people who, not even necessarily subs of mine, but people leave comments along the lines of, why you play video games and watch movies? Just live real life. Much better. Just boink and take dump and eat and work and nothing else. Now, obviously, not everyone thinks that, but there's always a contingent of people who do. So I should remind those people that entertainment has been around forever. Tens of thousands of years ago, our ancestors would be entertained with stories around the campfire, with tales of mythology and heroism, and later on, books. And now we have video games and films, so just to get that out of the way, yeah, entertainment and escapism are important human elements. Humans have always partaken in them, and that's not going to change now. But the topic of today is women in media, women in entertainment more broadly. That means films, that means video games. And unfortunately, I don't have a quote from Jordan Peterson this time around, but the reality is that women approach fiction, broadly speaking, very differently from men. And why? Because they have totally different personalities. So, broadly speaking, when you look at how women interact with fiction, they tend to self-insert a lot. Now, in before, not all, yes, there are probably some exceptions, obviously, but women have a tendency to insert themselves, to try to find themselves and identify themselves in fictional settings. Now, how do we know this? Well, there aren't any robust studies on this as far as I'm aware. I've never found any, because people don't want to study this, probably because it's somewhat taboo. But there are, as is always the case, tons of anecdotal examples and things we can observe. The vast majority of fan fiction, for example, is written by women, not men. And it begs the question, why do women write so much fan fiction about characters in established stories, effectively rewriting the stories that others have written, stories that are canonical, that have established characters, established plots, etc., etc., and women create fan fiction and change that. They take the characters and make them their own, i.e. they insert themselves in the story and try to find common ground there. Even young males will try to emulate what they see rather than trying to make the thing that they see more like them. So if they see a superhero like Superman or Batman or Captain America, they will strive to be like that. Even when a young girl, and certainly a woman, sees a superhero, there's no relation there because they can't see themselves in that character. Now, we can speculate, of course, as to why this is the case. Obviously, different evolved psychologies here. But why do women need to see themselves in fiction, to insert themselves when they have settings that are separate from them, that have nothing to do with them? Why do they, broadly speaking, there are exceptions, but broadly speaking, lack the ability to appreciate fictional alien settings that exist unto themselves and are separate from them? Well, my hypothesis would be, in general, the broad observation that women tend to be somewhat more solipsistic than men. They tend to suffer much more from what I refer to as me syndrome. Me. And there are good evolved reasons for this, probably. For example, men were frequently outside of the hearth and home. They were in an environment where they had to adapt, where they had to understand it. And women left their local environment much less frequently. And so what's familiar to women is the thing that they create, the hearth and home, the homemaker, as it were. Now, I'm just hypothesizing here because, again, there are not any good studies on this. Nobody wants to study it. But as I stated in the previous video, an overabundance of women, whether they're writers, actors, producers, directors, in entertainment, is not going to be without noticeable consequences. And that means that the kinds of things that women act in, they write, they produce, they direct, on average, are going to be quite different from the kinds of things that men produce. Many of you have probably heard about the aesthetic disaster known as Spider-Man 2, where Mary Jane, the wife or girlfriend of Spider-Man, who in the comics is a supermodel, has her face transformed into essentially a butch. She has a manly, square jaw that many men would be envious of. And who does she look like? Facially speaking, she looks like one of the writers who wrote big chunks of Spider-Man 2. And this woman has officially stated how important representation and self-insertion is in these games. There's another factor here as well. Because women ultimately can only appreciate fiction in as much as they see themselves in the fiction, right? When you have attractive characters that are female, that bothers them because they actually see the fictional characters as competition with themselves, even though the fictional hot female characters don't exist in reality. They're only in the game. But because women, in their solipsism, look at these things and can largely only appreciate it from the perspective of inserting themselves in the setting, they see these women as competition. Therefore, you cannot have attractive women in many games. This has been an overarching trend for the past 10 years or so, and has gotten worse and worse and worse with each passing year. Above all in Western games, tons and tons of unattractive women in many different roles that no man in his right mind would find attractive, oftentimes stamped with the rubric of realism. This is an argument you'll hear very frequently. We want to make the women look realistic, as if hot women in reality didn't exist. Only average-looking and below-average women in reality existed. All the while frequently having attractive males way above average in the games, because apparently that's realistic, but attractive women in games is not. But the jig is up. Like I said, women see themselves in these games, and therefore they see fictional hot females that don't exist in reality, the equivalent of which most of us men in reality would never even be able to talk to. They see them as competition, phantasms, pixels on a screen. It's shocking and it makes you shudder, quite frankly. Case in point, the casting director of The Witcher, which totally flopped for a number of reasons on Netflix, Sophie Holland, admitted to swapping out the characters as they were described in the books in an effort to challenge beauty standards. She said, quite literally, it's a direct quote, she wanted to challenge beauty standards with changing the way the actresses, only actresses, mind you, looked in the Witcher series, which is why you ended up with characters that looked absolutely nothing like the characters in the books. In most cases, unrecognizable. And guess what? None of them were super attractive either. So again, we see this recurrent theme with women being involved with the media who change the media to suit their own personal tastes. They're less interested in telling an interesting and compelling story with interesting characters, and much more interested in being able to, quote-unquote, feel themselves in the medium. And the result of this, quite frankly, from my perspective, has been disastrous. Because yes, there are exceptions, but generally speaking, broadly, this is what women do when they are deeply involved in fiction. They create a setting where they can see themselves, and they bring with them into the setting all of their real-world perspectives and problems, including intrasexual competition, including not wanting to be around attractive women in a made-up setting. It's absolutely insane if you think about it, but it's only insane if you're a man. If you're a woman, it makes perfect sense. Now, all of this is interconnected to the other stuff I talked about in the previous video. If you take women's proclivity to self-insert, to see women as competition in fictional settings, along with their proclivity to fall for particular ideologies, harm reduction, worrying less about truth and evidence than hurting people's feelings, you end up with this weird ideological smorgasbord that's affecting everything. Higher institutions of education, i.e. universities, government, the film industry, the games industry, all because people never thought that there would be pronounced differences between men and women in what they want, and above all, in what they want to create. Now, if you're a man, this creates a kind of living hell from the escapist perspective, because every year gets worse and worse. 2017 was better than 2019. 2019 was better than 2021. And 2021 was better than 2023. This is not the only reason, but it's a major reason why we can't have nice things as men. A place to escape to, something to admire, to appreciate. Gone for the most part are people's attempts, and I do mean men's attempts at creating compelling fiction that is compelling in and of itself, as distinct from the self-insertion fantasy that women love. And in as much as men do participate, they tend to want to placate the female wishes. So in the case of Spider-Man 2, you have multiple scenes where man-jawed Mary Jane is basically a superhero, and she's running around electrifying people because she needs to be a hero too. A lot of people will say, well, just watch old things. play old games. Okay, I do that. I know people who do that. But nobody really wants to end up like they're trapped in the film Groundhog Day, with Bill Murray, where you're just recycling the same day again and again and again. Eventually, you want new things. And the problem is, the new things are generally speaking not nice. There are a few exceptions here and there. As we rush towards 2024, like I said, every year it gets worse. Rest assured that whatever you thought was bad about entertainment in 2023 will be even worse in 2024, because that's become an axiom. I said to somebody not too long ago how strange it was that we were yearning for the year 2019. 2019 was an important year. It was the year prior to the pestilence and the mismanagement of that. But so many other things changed after 2019. Things were crazy enough. Now they're utterly insane. And so yes, I yearn for the year 2019, as do many of you, I suspect. But most importantly, I yearn for the late 90s and the early 2000s. What a time. I'm glad I was able to experience it when I was young, even if I didn't make the best of those years, because this trend, and more importantly, women's presence in media, will guarantee that we will be watching a lot of old films and playing a lot of old games. As always, thank you for tuning in. Many special thanks to my patrons. You guys are the best. You keep the channel going. Special thanks as well to my donors on PayPal. I am very grateful for your generosity. And to everyone else, if you can engage in the usual YouTube jazz, I'm not sure if it helps, but they tell me it does. Like the video, subscribe if you're not yet a subscriber, leave a comment, share it. Be much appreciated. If I'm still alive, I'll check you out next time. Until then, may the gods truly watch over you. Bye-bye for now. If you liked this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you enjoy my content, please consider making a donation or becoming a patron. Thanks for watching.